Hello everybody and welcome to this month's Rowing Chat. I'm Rebecca Caro, I work for Row Perfect, and today I've got a very special guest who has managed to cover the spectrum of coaching jobs from being an educator to taking crews all the way to the Olympic Games. Who are you and what do you do?
Well, good morning everybody, I'm Duncan Holland. What do? I do a bit of farming and I'm a groundsman. In my day job, I was a professional rowing coach for 25 years. I'm now semi-retired from rowing and I work weekends doing coach education and club visits. I also blog often but irregularly on Rebecca's Row Perfect site, and I do some email and internet coaching.
Brilliant stuff. So let's kick straight off into the questions that listeners have sent in when they booked their tickets. And I'd like to kick off with some all about novices and coaching novices. The first one is, what's the most important part of the stroke to teach novices to row, and how would you maximise on that part when you're starting out in the very first month or so that you're teaching?
Okay, leg drive. We all pay lip service to leg drive being the fundamental part of the stroke. Everybody agrees that you have to have fast legs to go fast. But if you watch most people coaching novices, the legs don't get mentioned till about month 3. I start with the legs. In an ideal situation, I put a novice on an erg and I arrange them in the right catch position. And then I say, right, sit up tall. Now relax your shoulders, suck your tummy in, hold your core tight depending on what sort of athlete I'm talking to. And I say, right, now drive your legs down, push your legs down hard. Well done. Repeat that, and all I do is organise them and push the legs. When I think they can do that, I then say, okay, you need to get back to the next one. So from the end of the stroke, the finish, where the handle's by your body, the arms go, the body goes, and you slide forward. Can we do that? Okay, now push again. And I stand there talking them through the recovery sequence and saying push at the front. If it's a whole group of people, we end up doing that together. Then we get on the water in the 8, or the quad, and we do exactly the same thing in pairs and fours, or in pairs if it's a quad. And then we go on to the whole 8. Everybody sit at the catch, sit up tall, hold your stomach firm, shove your legs down. And I usually manage to, and my aim is always to get 10 consecutive strokes. So unless it's something absolutely awful, I don't worry about grip. I just hang onto the handle and push your legs. And for the first several weeks, months even, of the crew's life, the athlete's life, I don't say, are you ready row? I say, are you ready push? And I've spent a lot of time talking about pushing the legs harder, because I think if it's fundamental, if it's the key to the stroke, well, make it the centre of your program.
That's fantastic. I love the example of using the word push instead of row. Really, really nice. Now, we've just had a quick feedback from the technical side, Duncan. Could you speak up a little more?
Okay, how's that?
That's good. A little supplemental question from Chris. So the catch is with a blade in the water at the catch? Question mark.
Yes. So rolled forward, blade in the water, so you're ready to go, yeah.
Fantastic. Which leads us very nicely into the second question, which I think is probably a book in itself. How do you coach a quick, accurate catch?
Yeah. Thank you for whoever asked that question. It's, as Rebecca says, it's a book. Do we have anyone from Ireland with us? If I was being un-PC, I say I'm Irish and I coach the catch from the finish. And what I mean by that is I think that in order to have a good catch, you must start well before the catch with your preparation. If you see a crew with bad catches, an individual with a bad catch, usually they are unprepared tight, stiff, not organised at the catch. So if you go back to the finish and make sure that the athlete, the rower, the sculler, gets a good preparation, does what I call getting organised, arms out first, body over, then gently up the slide, there's a fair chance that the catch will be improved. If you're sitting relaxed and easy at the catch, you've got a chance of timing the entry properly, getting it sharp, getting it quick, all those things we want. If you're arriving in a hurry, if you're tight, uncomfortable, there's no way you can time the entry properly. So the sort of routine I would use, in fact I was doing it yesterday with some kids I was coaching down in a place called Otago, the southernmost rowing centre in the world. Also the home of Nathan and Hayden Cohen, the New Zealand athletes. I start with pause rowing at the finish. So pausing at the finish with the arms extended, and then pausing rocked over to make sure they get a good swing, excuse me, and then pausing at half slide. And all the talk is about just take your time forward, and I don't even mention the catch. And after a sequence like that, when they're actually taking time coming forward, you'll find that the catch is much improved anyway, but also then the athletes are in a position and are able to respond to a command like quicken the catch, sharpen the catch.
Fantastic. Do you want to give us an example, Duncan, when you're working with a more experienced crew?
If it was a crew that I knew and that knew me and my language, I would probably say, we've lost the rhythm here, it's getting a little hurried, let's sit back at the finish a bit longer, sit and separate.
And separate means?
Hands away from body, get the arms out straight before the body comes over. Another word I use is organised, so come forward in the proper sequence. I talk a lot about relaxation on the way forward. You're probably starting to pick up, those of you who don't know me, that I'm a wordy sort of person, but I think choosing words carefully is very important. I might talk about being poised at the catch, about allowing the boat to run up rather than you running forward. And notice I'm not actually talking much about the action at the catch. I'm talking about the preparation for the catch.
Do you have any specific catch drills that you use to supplement the descriptive coaching?
I do. A basic one is roll-ups. I imagine most of you are familiar with that. The crew sits at the finish blades on the water, and part of the crew, if it's not an experienced crew, or the whole crew, if it is a good crew, then places the blade in the water at the finish, the boat still, lift the blade out, perform the recovery, and drop the blade in at the catch and stop. So out of the water, roll forward, place. That enables you, and with some help, the crew, to check the timing between the seat arriving at the catch and the blade going in the water. And you can work on that. And so that's a very good basic drill. Sitting at the catch, tapping the blade up and down, practicing the actual catch action is good. And slap catch, part of the crew or the whole crew, rolling forward as normal, but then don't square the blade and slap the blade onto the water at the catch as a check of timing. It's a good visual for the coach, and auditory, a sound signal for the crew. You can hear the slap as the blade's hit.
That's great. Got a nice comment from John, who said, do you know that the French for squaring is the word préparer?
Oh, lovely. I like it. The Germans use Einsatz for catch, which is input.
Input. There we go. One quick additional question about the catch. How do you describe the correct action of the catch?
When I'm coaching, I talk about placing it, slide it in. Oi, the scull's a knife, not an axe. Don't kill the fish. Up and away to the catch. Thumbs up, that's particularly sculling. Get hold of the water behind you. The catch is the end of the recovery, not the beginning of the drive. Look for a V-splash. Well, sculling catches thumbs apart. Lots of descriptive stuff. So less metaphorically, what we're looking for is the blade to be in the water as quickly as possible at the moment that the seat changes direction at the catch. Now, if we think about that carefully, we're trying to do the impossible. We're trying to put the blade from the air into the water instantaneously and instantaneously accelerate it to the speed of the boat going past, which just isn't possible. So there has to be some compromise and sort of rowing the blade in, but we want to minimize it. Water is precious, and the longer the blade's in the water, the faster the potential speed. So we're trying to get in as soon as possible without disturbing the boat. When it comes to assessing a catch, I look at the boat and how the boat's behaving. And if you've got a good catch, the stern of the boat keeps on running through the catch. If the catch is off, the stern of the boat drops or dips. So we're trying to achieve the impossible, and the closer that we get, the smoother the stern runs.
Good stuff. Now, the next question is perhaps a little controversial. The questioner asks that it appears as if the fastest style of rowing requires overlap of the back and legs at the catch. Can you explain the technique that you apply?
Oh, I'd love to. I don't agree with the fact that we have to use the legs and the back at the catch. If whoever answered the question is online, perhaps she or he could tell us what crew she is thinking of. I think the stroke always begins with just a leg movement. Excuse me, I just need to cough a moment. Sorry, here I am again. I teach that in all situations, the legs move first. Now, you have to accept that the back has to be held I think the back is held at a constant angle through the catch, into and out of the catch. The body angle stays the same. That requires the low back and the gluteus group to work to hold that, but there is a definite time when the back angle doesn't change in my style. Now, when the back starts moving depends on the speed of the boat. The faster the boat, the earlier in the stroke the back starts moving, and I think one of the questions later on addresses this issue. But again, I think every stroke starts with just the legs moving.
Fantastic. Lapping back to the catch, we've got a technical question about your V-splash. You mentioned that at the catch. The question is Chris, and he says, why is it not all backsplash to comply with Newton's third law?
Which one is Newton's? Third is...
equal and opposite reactions?
Opposite reactions. Well, if backsplash is towards the bow, in my language, and if you're only getting backsplash, then I would say you are slowing the boat down by hitting the water. Mm-hmm. Also, you'll wet the person behind you, which will make you extremely unpopular, particularly on the tideway in the winter. That's something which entered my experience through Mike Spracklin some 30 years ago. If the boat is sitting still and you perform a catch drill, you get a V-shaped splash. And it seems to me that if you've got the blade moving at the same speed as the water, you'll get something approaching a V-splash. Is that perhaps we can have another bit of feedback on the text about whether that answers the question.
Brilliant. Moving on, how do you improve your rowing journal? The question about diaries, I think?
Yes. Again, perhaps a bit of feedback, whether this is a rower or a coach. What I do with the rowing journal myself, and what I try and teach my rowers to do, is the same as we do, or tied in with what we do on the water, that we always have a goal for the day, for the week, for the outing. What are we trying to achieve? And before you go on the water, you know that you're going to practice the catch. We're looking for a lovely V-splash at the catch. And my take on sports psychology and the use of goals is that one of the things is they have to be measurable. And so when you finish the session, how did we do? Did we get the perfect V-splash? Well, no. Were we better? Yes. Well, okay, what was it? A 6 out of 10? An 8 out of 10? Were we really good today? Was it a 9 out of 10? And so I record a score. It's a number, but it's still subjective usually. If it's an erg test, that's fine. We want to do 6 minutes 10, and we've got a 6.9, or we've got a 6.11, so that's recordable. So actually, put your goals in and record whether you achieved them. And then, in the course of a normal season, you can read back through your diary, which is something you should do anyway, and see some progress. And that's actually a very positive, a very affirming sort of experience, because one of the things I think a journal can do is remind you that you have actually got better. You start rowing in the autumn and you're grinding away through the winter, as we are here at the moment, and you think, well, I've been training for 4 months and I haven't got better. You look back at your diary, and then you can actually get some feedback that tells you, well, actually, I have made some progress. If I look back then, I was struggling on that, and now I can do it. I keep my journal on the computer, but whether it's computer or paper, I think a template works. So it makes it very quick, and you can have a few I have a few columns for numbers, kilometres rowed, weights lifted, and what have you, which I can add up because I like that. Rebecca, I believe you've got a journal template?
Yeah, I was given one by Harry Marn, and it's one for athletes to use, and it has very similar attributes to what you've described, in that it encourages the athlete to give a 1 out of 5 score for each training session, but it also records the amount of liquids you've eaten that day, how many hours sleep you had, and how rested you feel in the morning, and what your waking pulse is. I can share that with anyone on this chat. It's on the Row Perfect website, so I'll circulate the URL so you can download it for yourself.
That's a good point. The eating and drinking, resting pulse and weight are valuable.
I once saw the British Rowing template, and the only thing that they had on it that wasn't on there was the colour of your urine in the morning, in shades of presumably yellow.
Straw-coloured is the colour of a good champagne is what we want there, Rebecca.
I'm sure a lot of athletes know what that looks like. Now, I'd like to tack on to a question that's probably as long as your arm. How do you make a good crew go faster?
Do you want the cynical real-world answer?
Go for it.
Find a bigger, stronger athlete and throw the weakest one out. That's what happens at international level. That's what happens at top level. That's not really. I don't think that's what our listener was looking for. But say if you're involved in the cutthroat world of top sport and your athletes are getting towards their possible reaching their potential, and you're not fast enough, you go and find a better athlete, or change the boat type. Go from in British terms, you go from a pair to a four, don't you? as we saw at the Olympics.
Interestingly, this year, New Zealand's had a very large number of young men who are either under 23s last year or under 23s this year, and a lot of them tried to transition into the senior team to make an 8 for the Rio Olympics, and they realised they were never going to make it, and a very large number have given up. Too many athletes, none of them, all too similar. Their scores are all very, very similar, and most of them realise they're not going to get strong enough to make the grade in 3 years' time. Yes,
I'll say at that level, it is absolutely cutthroat. You might be better off taking up cycling or going back to work and earning some money. At the level that most of us work at, you have a crew that's going quite nicely. My basic approach is to do an analysis and look for the area you can improve most, the weak link, if you like. Is it technique? Is it strength? Is it fitness? Is it racing skills? And so to do an analysis and say, well, what can we change? We have a limited amount of time until the next major championship we're looking at. And so I look for something we can change. Now, my particular love is technique, so I've never yet coached a crew with perfect technique, so there's always something you can improve on the technical side. We've been talking about the catch. The catch is never perfect. You can always get a few milliseconds of improvement out of the stroke by improving the catch. Now, when I say, okay, you're going to change something, one of the things to remember that is if you do the same thing all the time, the body and the brain stop changing. So if you've come to a plateau in your technique or your fitness, your performance, you may need to change the stimulus. So do something different. Alter the training program. Instead of doing the same 2 29-minute pyramids that you've done on Thursdays every week for the last 3 years, do 3 19s or 145 or something different like that. In general, as crews get older and better trained, you can start changing the training. I tend to do, with a top-level crew, more intense work and less base endurance than I would with a younger crew. And so that's something which you have to look at for yourself. Cross-training is an alternative. Go and do something different, useful but different. Train on bikes instead of on ergs for a while. If you're lucky enough to have people who can cycle and you've got good roads, we'll get out on the road, or go to the gym and do spin classes on the stationary bikes instead of doing the erg. Mix it up, change it, challenge the crew physically and mentally. Sorry?
There's a question here. Is there only so far you can go with a team by perfecting their stroke and form then?
Everybody has a limit. I could never have rowed as fast as Bond and Murray. I just don't have the physical ability or mental ability to do that. We all have limits. But that said, very, very few of us ever even approach our limits. So I've never seen a crew that I would say, hey, that's as good as it can be. I've always had something to look for. And we're talking about Bond and Murray, the magnificent pair that they are at the moment. I think there are some technical things they could do better. I don't think any crew ever really reaches its optimum.
Talking about club-level crews, which is my own experience, I think one of the biggest areas that is never explored is how to take risks in racing to chance the results on being ambitious. And it's something that it's taken me a long time to learn, and which, interestingly, I experienced at the weekend. I did a head race, and we had to go around various markers. It was a circular course, and twice men's quads came up behind me. I was in a single. And, of course, you're in a position where the slower crew should give way to the faster crew. And once I was able to take significant advantage of them because they steered badly, and the other time we went round the marker together, interestingly, one boat weaving inside the other, which was very exciting.
Well, you asked us, you by 4 men, Rebecca.
I'm not asking. I claim the 5th.
Yeah. Well, I did mention racing skills as one of the things you can look at. Yes, the whole mental side. Crews get comfortable, and a crew which is going well still needs to be challenged mentally, and risk-taking is part of that. Human beings, and athletes are human, coaches aren't, but athletes are. Athletes need to be challenged, and they need to learn, as you say, to take risks. And I like to have a great deal of racing in training as part of that. And if you've got a long bit of water, one of the standard things I do is have the group in as smaller boats as possible. Singles or pairs is ideal, and row away from the club to a stopping point, and stop at a time or on an instruction, so you have the crew spread, the boats spread out, turn round, and there you have your handicap for the trip home, and say go. And you'll be amazed, if you haven't ever done this, that a lot of the slow ones on the way out who were getting eaten up on the way home, they have a head start, they can see the people behind them, and suddenly they row a whole lot faster. And
that's interesting. We've got a question here which says, could you be serious about singling if you're also required to be in a quad for team purposes?
Okay, yeah. So carry on about the handicap. That gives the coach and the athlete a way at looking at the athlete's performance and asking that difficult question is, why weren't you rowing faster on the way up? Which, as I say, opens up all sorts of room for improvement. Can you be serious in a single and a quad at the same time? At club level, yes. You say required to be in a quad. If you're spending most of your time in the quad, the basic movement is the same as a single. What you haven't got is the timing. The single is a very different boat, and so the timing is a bit different. So you need to spend some time in a single for the feel. You don't necessarily need to do any work in the single. So if your club coach has you training 8 times a week in the quad, you could go out on Saturday and Sunday afternoons for half an hour at a time in the single just to get the feel of it. And then if you do a decent warm-up before your race, you should be able to perform, I think. So yeah, it's a matter of feel and timing, a bit like playing 2 different musical instruments. You just need to remember the rhythm when you get back into the single. At international level, very, very few people double up successfully.
I'm going to take a pause there to remind everyone that RowingChat is sponsored by the RP3 indoor rowing machine. It's now used by internationals like Alexander Alexandrov of Azerbaijan, who won the Henley Diamond Sculls last week, beating competitors including Mahi Drysdale from New Zealand and Alan Campbell from Great Britain. Other countries who are using Row Perfect include Holland, the USA, Denmark, and New Zealand. Anyone who would like to try Row Perfect, please get in touch at rowperfect.co.uk. Back to the questions, Duncan. Information about the amount of training that full-time athletes do is very freely available, but most of us obviously are part-time and we train around real life of work and families. If you're aiming high at an amateur level, what sort of professional training is most important and what parts could be cut out?
Yeah, speaking from the high level, the professional rowers I've dealt with, a standard sort of week is about 16 sessions, more or less 8 of endurance, 4 of intensive rowing, and 4 of weights or resistance. If I was coming back to 10 sessions a week, which is what I think high-level amateur is, first thing I'd do would be to get rid of 4 of the endurance sessions. I'd also reduce the number of weight sessions, and so for a 10-session week, I'd end up doing 4 endurance rows, 4 intensive rows, and 2 weight sessions. That's a bit dependent on the age of the crew, of course, but realistically, you have to get rid of volume because you just don't have the time to do as much volume. The intensive stuff is still pretty important. International level crews often split their weight training into legs only one day and arms and upper body the next day. Amateurs don't have the luxury of doing that usually. One of the important things I think for high-level amateurs is to build their life around training, and for instance, cycle everywhere rather than taking the bus or the car. And that, so get background exercise when you can. When I was at university, my department was on the 3rd floor, and I added up how many stairs I climbed by not taking the lift, and it was significant. So things like that. If you're in London, run up the stairs rather than take the escalator up in the tube. Put as much extra exercise into your life as you can, where, say, a professional will drive in her sponsored car to the rowing course and do all her work there. If you cycle there, you've at the cost of 10 minutes, you've got half an hour of extra exercise.
That's great. One of the things that we always used to say is, if you've got the rowing club, your home, and where you work or study, don't make it a 3-way commute. Live close to either where you study or where you row.
Yeah. And well, high-level amateurs, the question is that that full-time rowers have got all the time in the world, and aiming high amateurs have to train around work and families. One of the sad but realistic answers is that if you want to be a high-level amateur, it cuts into your social life in a big way. There's a saying at Cambridge University that there are 3 things to do at university. There's study, if you're interested, the social life, and the sport, and you can only do 2 of them properly. And that really applies in real life as well. If you've got a family and you're rowing, you won't be able to have a social life as well as row properly.
Right, moving on. What are your thoughts about coaching crews for rhythm?
I love it. Rhythm is absolutely vital. I think it was Steve Fairburn who said, if you can't do it easily, you can't do it at all. And going fast without rhythm is much more difficult than going fast with rhythm. I find it quite hard to tell other coaches what I do. I've been rowing, for those of you who don't know me, I'm 60-ish, and I've been rowing for 45 years. And when I look at a crew which has got a wrong rhythm, it's like hearing bad music. It's just wrong. And I had to actually stop and think to describe to someone else what is wrong. And so from having looked at crews and been in crews for so long, I have a very fixed idea of how the rhythm should be. And this ties in with my talking about the catch. The rhythm is set up around the finish. And good crews have time, or good sports people have extra time. If you're in tune with the boat, if you're in tune with your sporting movement, you have more time than an ordinary mortal. And Hamish Bond, the stroke of the New Zealand men's pair, has the ability to look unhurried at rating 44. And another lovely example was the British women's pair at the Olympics, which was one of Robin Williams' crews, I believe. They had time, and there's no hurry about it, even at high rating. Now, how do I get there? Similar actually to the catch. Sit at the finish position with your body for longer than you think is possible. The arms float away and rock over and then gently forward on the slide. And I describe it as being in time with the boat. Most rowers hurry forward and then wait around at the catch. So stay back, let the boat come to you rather than you going to the boat, but then a well-timed catch. I feel I'm not being particularly explicit here. Rhythm is subjective. It's a feeling. It's a look. But it's got to look easy. And
a bit more volume, Duncan.
Sorry. Rhythm has got to... good rhythm looks easy. It's got to feel easy. It's got to look easy. It's got to be sweet, is a word I use. Take time. Fast rowing, fast boats don't require fast movements in the crew. It's another way of looking at it. Even our high ratings, 40-ish, the movements are actually quite slow. So take your time. Let the boat do some of the work. Carrying on the music theme, a mathematical music teacher of our acquaintance watched the kids rowing on the ergs at 18, and they were talking about music, and he said, "Oh, well, that's a blues beat." Now, I'm not enough of a musician to know quite what he was talking about, but he actually wrote a blues song for the kids to sing while they were rowing at 18, and it's a rhythmic and repetitive beat, but it's quite, it's blues, it's slowish. So yeah, rhythm, my thoughts on coaching crews for rhythm, absolutely vital, worth looking for. If you can't do it easily, you can't do it at all.
At what point during the drive do you recommend opening up the back and then the arms, keeping on the technique theme? On the technique theme,
okay. The biomechanics specialists have quite clear rules on this. Rowing is a sequence of joint movements, like a lot of sports, a summation of forces. And the general rule is, if you're moving one joint, when that joint gets to 90 degrees, which is the point of maximum strength, then after that, the next joint kicks in. So in a rowing movement, from the catch, you drive the legs, and when the knees get to 90 degrees, the back starts moving off the legs. When the thighs and the back get to 90 degrees, the arms start drawing in. I don't teach that because a rower doesn't know when his or her legs are at 90 degrees. What I teach is the slower the boat, so a lightweight woman's single at one extreme and a heavy men's 8 at the other, the slower the boat, the longer you stay with the first muscle movement. So a lightweight woman in a single drives the legs on their own for a long time before the back comes in, and then the arms come in later. A heavy men's 8 sprinting out of the start, the legs, the back, the arms are getting much closer together. And it's a matter of feel and, again, rhythm. I recommend, let's say, theoretically, on joint angles, or if you look at down the slide, around half slide, the back starts moving, and as the knees are getting close to down, the arms start moving. But do it by feel. Do it by rhythm and feel, rather than by trying to specify at this point you start moving.
Good stuff. Thinking now perhaps more towards teaching children and juniors to row, what things do you do that'll make rowing more fun?
Okay, well, I've actually written a little ebook about this, which I think Rebecca can sell to you. Perhaps if we've got the person who asked this question, could we have a quick feedback on what age of people we're talking about? I have a very firm philosophy that if it's not fun, it's not worth doing in terms of rowing. But fun doesn't have to be unstructured. Kids around the usual beginning age of 12, 13, 14, I'm extremely competitive with them. We race every day in some shape or form. Not 2 kilometres lined up and down the course, but at some stage in the training session there will be a race of some sort. I try and fiddle the crews and fiddle the competitions so that everybody gets to win. You don't want the poor little fat kid always losing and the star always winning.
That's a good one. Duncan, I've just got to answer. The question was for upper level university age.
Okay, I'll just finish off on the kids and then I'll come back to the upper level university. With the kids, I try and make learning technique competitive. And for instance, if you've got the right bit of water, kick a football, and where I come from, footballs are pointy, into the river, and the kid has to go out in the single and bring it back, and you time them, and then the next one goes out. Things like that. So they're getting all the skills of manoeuvring a boat, but it's not a straight race, and it can still be competitive. Okay, upper level university. Think about why the people are rowing, and success in racing is a big part of it. So going fast is fun. I always loved going fast when I could. The belonging, the exclusivity of being in the crew is important. So there needs to be a feeling of togetherness in the crew. You have to have, hopefully can have some social life based around the crew. At that age, I would be looking for the athletes to have quite a lot of ownership of the program. So at upper level university, we're talking about young people in the 20 to 24-ish age group mostly. I would be expecting them to be driving the program more than me. It wouldn't be something that I would be inflicting on them, saying this is what you have to do. I would be hoping to be able to sit with them and say, right, we want to achieve this, whether it's if this is a British crew, we want to go fast at Henley, or we want to beat the Uglies down the road in the annual race, or we want to go to the Head of the Charles, or whatever, and get them to drive the program.
How does that make it more fun, Duncan?
Ownership. I don't think humans either. I'm extrapolating from this, from my own experience here. I don't like being told what to do. Whereas if I've decided I'm doing it, I own it and I enjoy it much more.
And so part of the transition for that age group is the movement between being at school and being a child and being told what to do and being an adult and making your own decisions. But it's also the switch from being a student towards being a professional. And a professional, as you rightly say, takes ownership, but they also take responsibility. How do you suggest the questioner helps their team make that transition from being a student attitude towards being a professional working person? Well,
it would be around the goal-setting process for me. And so at the start of the season and at appropriate intervals through the season, what are we trying to do? We want to make the last 8 at Henley. Okay, great, that's fine. The best the club's done in the last few years has been the last 16, right. Okay, what do we have to do to get there? And very quickly you'll figure out you've got to train 8 times a week and not drink too much alcohol and get to bed on time and all that kind of thing. And in my experience, the athletes are often actually willing to do more than you were prepared to ask them to do. But that approach runs right through the whole training process that they're setting the goals, not you. It's not you imposing a goal on them. It's them setting a goal and you helping them to achieve their goal. This gets into coaching philosophy. A coach, in my opinion, and what I try to do is I'm a catalyst, I'm a facilitator, I'm a helper, helping people achieve what they want to achieve. Now, if a crew's not having fun, could be that the crew's not going well. So it could be a technical or training issue which can be addressed. But very often there's a conflict between what the people want and what the crew's doing. You know, I can't go out with my mates, or we're not training hard enough to achieve what I want to achieve, are the two sides. And so by getting a correlation between what the crew wants and what they're doing, in general, life is easier.
That's a good one. Moving on now to looking about land training. Any specific workouts that work best for teaching young people to support their torso for proper posture and swing?
I'm not really sure that this is an answer that I can give verbally easily. The core, the abdominal and low back area is absolutely vital. I can't stress that strongly enough. To row fast, you must be strong in the middle. To do that, you need to train, and you may well need some expert help. There are various ways of going about it. Physiotherapists talk about core strength. The Pilates programs are wonderful. Old-fashioned yoga is good. Work on a Swiss ball is good. Good Jim Bunny lifting coaches are very good at this area. There's a couple of important things. You need to get stronger in the middle, but also the athlete needs to learn how to engage those muscles. So it's one thing to be strong, it's another to use them all the time. In my programs, there is always a big off-the-water component in training the middle of the body, the core, the torso, whatever words you want to use on that. In terms of what can you do in the boat?
Duncan, we're going to leave that. Sorry, the question was specifically about the land, and we've got more questions possibly than we're going to have time, so I'm going to wriggle along a little quicker.
Yep.
Teaching adult novice rowers the patience needed when approaching the catch has been a challenge. Do you recommend any drills for that?
Yeah, there's a couple I've got here. One of my favourite ones is with a fixed wheel erg, you know, the Concept 2 or something similar like that, is to put the back end of it up on a step. So the slide is sloping forward down towards the catch. If you row like that, you actually have to brake yourself on the way forward. And people who flop forward end up flopping badly. So it's a very good way of emphasizing that. Another way, which I've actually used with my own veteran crew with me in it at the Cambridge Bumps a few years ago, was everyone side by side on the erg with a bungee cord stretched along the handle. So everyone was holding the bungee so that everybody had to move together. And I was leading it, so everyone had to keep in time with me. Just a demonstration. Another thing I've done in a big gym is put the ergs all in a row, like they are in the boat, with me in the coxswain's position, shouting at them about slowing down. So there's 3 drills for you. Brilliant.
What are some healthy training protocols for masters at beginning, intermediate, and expert competition?
Slightly flippantly, beginner masters train every day so that you want to come and train again tomorrow. If you train so hard you don't want to train tomorrow, you back off a bit. Intermediate level, train so that it doesn't interfere with the important bits of the rest of your life. Now, what's important is up to you. Expert masters, I'm not sure that training that hard is healthy, and that's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's also a little bit serious. Look after your body, enjoy it. Masters should remember that they're only going to get slower, so there's no point in trying to kill yourself to go faster, because it's just not going to happen.
That's quite a realisation.
Yeah, I told you I was going to be a bit out there.
Can you then suggest some training tips for older, less flexible rowers?
Yeah, flexibility is important, and you need to keep working on it. What I do actually is rig boats differently. If you're in the luxurious position of having boats for masters only, lower the feet and flatten the feet, because it makes it easier to get forward, especially if your middle is sticking out a little bit. If you can't adjust the feet, have a seat pad so you get a little bit higher. And the other thing is to change the rigging by having a narrower span and shorter oars and inboards, and then you can get a longer arc without having to roll so far on the slide. So it's the same thing you do for a short person in a tall crew. Mm-hmm. So narrow the span, shorten the oars, and you'll get the same length. It's easier to get a longer stroke that way.
Fantastic. You've been coaching for a while now. What's the biggest change you've seen in how rowing is coached for technique purposes during your time?
Oh, videos and ergs. When I was first coaching, it was really, really flash to have a camera with a power drive, and 2 days later you got some. And as you know, Rebecca, I'm now just experimenting with a smartphone, taking video on the smartphone, and you compare, and the instant feedback and the ability to spread it around the world. You compare that to when I started coaching. As I add ergs, because no children these days would believe it, but ergs were only invented in the mid-'80s or thereabouts. So to have a rowing simulator on dry land where you can teach in comfort and stability is an enormous change.
Yeah. Keep the volume up, Duncan. I'm going to ask everybody who is listening if they would like to ask an extra question, please to put it into the text chat, just while I wrap up with a couple of questions for you, Duncan, about yourself. On the Row Perfect blog, you answered Mike Davenport's ideas for judging a coach's success, and they had little to do with the trophies they'd won. Are you still impressed by trophies, and how do you do when you test them against yourself? Very personal.
Yeah, say, is this somebody who knows me? I love trophies. I love winning. I love the buzz of having been associated with a winning crew. It's less important to me than it was. I'm going to be quite open here. The older I've got, the less my ego has been involved, and I now measure myself more the way that Mike does, and I look at retention rates and whether the athletes have improved. Now, I would say that I've got older and wiser, and possibly I'm a better human being. You could say that I've gone soft and sold out, and I'm no longer a high-performance rowing coach at heart. We've got a whole hour of philosophy there if we wanted it.
You were coached for the boat race at Cambridge University in the UK. John is asking, what did you learn as a coach from your time at Cambridge?
On the rowing side, the gladiatorial style of racing, the boat race is a race till you're in front. And you can win it if you're lucky in the first mile, and sometimes you have to go the whole 4 1/4. So the bravery needed to just keep on going until the other person cracks, and the fact that there's no second place was really brought home to me by the boat race. And one of the challenges I faced, which I found took a great deal of pleasure from, was mixing people from 4 or 5 different countries and backgrounds into one boat.
And was it just the personalities and the cultural stereotypes?
You're thinking of some Germans that we know. Personalities, rowing, but also belief in different rowing styles. I've won a world championship rowing this way. It must be right. But hang on, I've won an Olympics rowing a different way. It must be right. A crew like one of the boat race crews is full of alpha males, and everybody wants to be top dog. And so the social organisation, making a crew and getting someone who's been an alpha male all his life to accept that in this situation he's not top dog, he's number 2 or 3, is an interesting challenge.
Next question is from someone who's clearly a parent of a 14-year-old girl. She says, how do you strengthen her? She's very slight and I want her to be competitive against bigger, stronger girls of the same age while they've still got soft developing bones.
Hard answer. In rowing, a lighter young person won't be competitive against the big ones straight away. There's just no way. It will take time to get stronger, and you shouldn't force it. And I would look at the definition of success. Success is not necessarily beating the big girl. Success is being as good as you can be.
Thank you. That's nicely put. And that question I'm going to introduce to you offline, Duncan, because I think they have some other more personal questions which they'd like answers to.
Fine, yeah. Now, thank you to everyone out there for joining in here. I'm sure that if you were engaged, you'll be off to work or having a late night cup of tea and think, I wish I could have answered that. I'm available to answer questions. On a professional level, I do internet coaching. This group, if you contact me through Rebecca, I'll answer the first question for fun and as part of this session. And then if we develop a relationship, that's fine. We can talk about the professional side of it. So any questions you've got coming out of this or anything else, please feel free to send them on to me via Rebecca, and I'll answer them over the course of this week. And thank you very much for being part of the Row Perfect chat.
It's been brilliant. We put my email address onto the rowing chat. I think we've just got time for one last question from Chris. It says, what do you think, Duncan, about lactate tolerance work? Apparently Mike Spracklin did 16 lots of 1.5 minutes with 15 seconds rest, and he does 30 seconds. Do you have any comments?
Sorry, could you give me those numbers again?
So Spracklin did 1.5 minutes with 15 seconds rest, times 16, and Chris does 30 seconds. I'm guessing 30 seconds is the rest, Chris, not the work time.
16 times 1.5 minutes on and 15 seconds off, you would be completely dead. I think you'd get more physiological response from the longer rest, but my understanding of Mike's programs are very largely based around mental toughness, and there are times when just making it hurt is useful. I would gently suggest, Mike is a much more successful coach than I was, that Mike's programs might tend towards the mental toughness rather than the physiological effectiveness a bit. But hey, he's coached a number of Olympic 8 gold medals, which I haven't. But so I would have a longer rest.
And a follow-up to that, the same questioner says that he actually did this workout and he was dead. He did it in 1975 and Mike Spracklin was subbing into the crew. So Mike Spracklin does his own training.
Well, hats off to Mike. Respect.
Liz from the USA has sent in a last question. She's working with junior rowers. What can you do to adjust for the differences in their height?
If you have the boat to yourself, you can alter the gearing. And it's like I was talking about for the inflexible athletes. A short person, if you narrow the span or spread, shorten the oar and the inboard, you can get the same angle from a smaller person. If you email me, I can give you some examples of that. If it's a normal club situation where you can't alter the gear, set them in the boat so they're together at the finish. The angles are the same at the finish, and accept that the long person will row a longer arc than the smaller person. But say, if you're heading towards a big regatta, you need to fiddle with the gearing, and if you email me, I can give you some examples of how to do that.
Fantastic. Everybody who's here, I'd just like to echo Duncan's comments on thanking you for your time, your attention, your excellent questions. It always is a real pleasure for Row Perfect and myself to host the Rowing Chat. A quick flag for next time. We're going to be moving on to a slightly different topic, so watch out in your inboxes when we send you round the invitation. And as ever, if anybody has any feedback about the structure and organisation of this, how we can widen the appeal, make it more fun for you, please send them over. Duncan, thank you very much for being with us today. The audience, thank you very much for being with us today. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.